Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. Thanks for joining us this morning. Today, we are pleased to present you with free CE, usually very popular. Today, we have with us OneAmerica, one of our absolute favorite carriers for life and disability, and they're going to present a 1-hour CE on understanding group life products and taxation. Before I begin, a little bit of housekeeping. Since this is a little different, this is a CE, we're obviously not in person. We're doing this online, so a couple things that you need to pay attention to and do to make sure you get your credit for the CE. We've got to capture your NPN, your National Producer Number, on your license and your name, and so we're going to do that with a post-call survey. That'll pop up after the webinar is over, so make sure you stick around for that so you can enter your licensing information so we can get the credit to you. We'll also do a follow-up email up to 1 hour after the webinar ends if you prefer, or for some reason the pop-up doesn't come up, to enter your information that way. So again, please make sure you fill that out to get your credit. Also, make sure you stay on the webinar app. Don't click around on your computer looking at other things, or you may not get credit either. Also, during the webinar, our host, Luke Zenny, is going to ask a couple questions just to make sure you're paying attention, and those will come up on the screen, and just answer the questions in the chat box for us, if you would please. Again, so that's just some housekeeping to make sure everyone gets their CE credit. This is me, Jeff Lewis. Just want to remind you to make sure you are connected with Cornerstone. We do a weekly newsletter every Monday, the Monday Minute, that's full of good updated information on our carrier partners and industry updates. And make sure that you are taking advantage of all the services and information that are available on our website. All right, at this point, I'm ready to turn it over to Luke Zenny with OneAmerica. So take it away, Luke.
Hey, thank you, Jeff. Sorry about that. I was making sure my screen is working. Can everybody see my screen with the presentation?
Yeah, you're good.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Jeff, and good morning, everybody. My name is Luke Zenny. I'm our sales manager for OneAmerica here. I'm based in Cincinnati. We're going to be going through today some group life plans and taxation implications. I'm going to go through the slideshow here. I like keeping these interactive, so if folks have questions along the way, please don't hesitate to jump in and ask those questions in the chat. We'll be sure to do our best to address those. And as Jeff stated as well, I will be asking 3 polling questions throughout the meeting today, so please make sure that you get those answered. I try to keep that fun. It's nothing crazy, but we just need to do that to ensure that everybody is on for the hour. Without further ado, I will go ahead and get started. And what we're going to cover today is, and bear with me, I'm trying to get this working here. It is not letting me move to the next slide. Hold on here.
Are you clicked into your PowerPoint?
There we go. I was joking with Lindsay and Jeff earlier, guys. I'm sorry, I'm not the most tech savvy person, so bear with me, but we should get through this pretty smoothly. So what are we going to cover today? We're going to cover structures of group term life policies, some key provisions in term life policies, some taxation implications for term life policies, dependent life policies, voluntary policies, and then we're going to wrap up a little bit with some enrollment strategies. And that's where I'm going to want to hear a little bit from some of you all, what you're doing today to maximize your time with your groups as far as enrollment, strategizing, and encouraging participation. So let's talk about some typical plan structures. Most group life policies are employer paid, in other words, non-contributory. And group term life policies usually have a matching AD&D benefit as well. Some typical benefit designs. A typical group term plan provides eligible employees with a flat amount of benefit, for example, $20,000. Plans can also be set up to provide a multiple of earnings, for example, 1 times your earnings up to $50,000. And amounts in excess of $50,000 will likely have tax implications, which we will touch on a little bit later. Another piece that you see here quite commonly is if you have select groups that may have a large group of, let's call it, management folks or VPs, you quite frequently will see class structures where, for example, a group of management folks might have a one-time salary benefit up to, say, $150,000, and all of your other eligible employees might have a flat benefit of $50,000. So again, it's up to you all in your respective fields to kind of get an idea and get a feel with what might make the most sense. But bottom line is every group's going to be different, and you're going to need to tailor the benefit designs to make sure everybody's income is appropriately covered. And again, so I said here, they're able to offer different benefits to employees by class. And again, at the end of the day with this, you need to have an idea on what's going to adequately cover some of your larger earners, as well as some of the folks who you might just want to be offering a smaller flat benefit to with what works with your budget. So typical age reductions. Most group term life policies begin to reduce the face amounts at age 65. Further reductions can occur depending on the language in the policy. For example, benefits reduced to 65% at age 65, 50% at age 70, and 25% at age 75 are some of the common ones. And again, I would always encourage you to work with your company reps and account managers to get creative with this, right? I mean, there are some companies out there that will offer no reduction schedule if the risk is correct. There are others who are going to be less interested in doing something like that. So again, ultimately, you're going to have to get a feel for the demographics of your groups to see what makes the most sense. So coverage during disability. Most group term life policies have a provision which allows employees to continue coverage with no premium payment. This provision is called waiver of premium. Provisions can vary a great deal from policy to policy, so it's important to understand the key components to the waiver of premium provision. So what is the importance of the waiver of premium? Again, it's a very important provision in a life policy. In many cases, if an employee qualifies for waiver of premium, they are very likely uninsurable for individual life products due to medical conditions. So the ability to keep group term life products with no premium payment is often critical for this disabled employee. So how do you qualify? In order to qualify for waiver of premium, most policies stipulate that the employee must be totally disabled from any occupation. Further, most policies require that a totally disabled employee be under a specified age, typically age 60. And again, this is another area where I encourage you to have a proactive discussion with your carrier reps and account managers to really get an idea on how that waiver provision works, because some carriers will have different elimination periods in there. Some carriers will have different age qualifications. So in fact, what I would really encourage you to do is, ask your partners if if they have a marketing piece that they can send you that specifically details how the waiver of premium provision works, because this is one of those items that can get a little, for lack of a better word, hairy when you are making these carrier transitions and implementations. It's one of the items, along with continuity of coverage, that I personally harp on quite a bit, that you really, really, really need to feel well versed and comfortable with how those provisions work to make sure that nobody falls through the cracks. So again, if the employee is totally disabled and under the specified age, most policies require that an elimination period be satisfied, usually 6 or 9 months. For groups that offer long-term disability, when possible, it makes sense to align the LTD duration with the waiver of premium duration. Waiver of premium approval. Once the totally disabled employee, again, typically under age 60, satisfies the elimination period and is approved for benefits, premium payments would no longer be required. Again, be sure to understand the EP language included in your life proposals. I can't stress that enough. Waiver of premium durations. Once an employee is eligible for waiver of premium, the life contract will remain in force with no premium payment required until the employee is no longer disabled, a specified age stipulated in the contract is reached, for example, age 65, and they meet any other contractual provisions. Most policies periodically require that the disabled employee provide proof of continuing total disability, typically annually. So what is in a proposal? Before we go into this, guys, I'd like to ask everybody our first polling question. So Lindsay, if you could help please gather these answers. I would like to know what everybody's favorite vacation destination is. I thought that'd be a good one to ask, considering we are in the heart of summer. We got a lot of people traveling. I would like to know what everyone's favorite vacation destination is. I'll give everybody a couple minutes to answer those, and then we'll keep it rolling. Lindsay, I do not have access to the chat box, it looks like. So can you go ahead and let me know when you think we're okay to move forward once we got a lot of those answers in?
Yes, we see a few coming in. Italy, Colorado, Costa Rica. We'll give it another minute or so.
Costa Rica has been on my personal bucket list. Whoever put that in there, gonna have to get with you offline and hear how that went, because that has been a big time bucket list item for me. Again, for those listening in, that's favorite vacation destination.
And for anyone answering, you can go ahead and answer in that question section.
Lindsay, I'll wait for your
Perfect.
green light to keep moving. You just let me know.
I think we are good.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so let's talk about a couple things, in a proposal. So insurance carriers can include a variety of durations in their proposals, generally ranging from 1 year to age 70. The most common durations are age 65 or Social Security full retirement age, commonly known as SSFRA. and be sure to know what language is included in every proposal that you receive. And this is not just referencing waiver of premium. This is generally speaking. I mean, it's very important, especially in the ancillary world with life and disability. A lot of times folks just say, life insurance is life insurance. LTD and STD is just that, disability insurance. Oftentimes carriers do have similar provisions, but it's very key to make sure you are going through those proposals line by line to make sure some of these things are included, and waiver of premium is obviously a big one. So coverage remaining with the carrier at risk. Remember that the disabled employee who is approved for waiver of premium will remain covered by that carrier that was in force at the time of disability. So for example, an employee who is covered by ABC insurance for term life benefits and eventually qualifies for waiver of premium, the employer later changes carriers, for example, to obtain a lower rate. The disabled employee's coverage remains with ABC insurance. Oh, but boy, I could spend way too much time talking about continuity of coverage here when changing carriers. So we'll spend a couple minutes on this because, again, this is extremely important here, especially when we are in, large case implementation season. This is a big hot button here. So what happens when you change carriers and an employee is not actively at work? What carrier is responsible? Who makes that determination? What steps do you need to take to make sure an employee doesn't fall through the cracks in the transition? So some things to keep in mind. Review the continuity of coverage scenarios to determine what carrier is liable and what steps to follow. This will cover the following: an employee who is on an employer-approved leave of absence, an employee who is in the waiver elimination period, an employee who is disabled and on life waiver of premium with the prior carrier. So some scenarios: an employee who is disabled and not eligible for waiver of premium with the prior carrier, an employee who is disabled and eligible but failed to satisfy the waiver of premium filing requirement, an employee who is absent from work due to a non-medical event. So I'll stop there on the slide and again reiterate this, that the continuity of coverage scenarios, everybody, is very important to be proactive again with your carrier partners on the sales side and on the account management side. I would encourage you to ask your carrier partners when you're implementing new cases and making your case transitions, to just ask them, how does it work for folks that are not actively at work, for folks that are currently on disability. Oftentimes, carriers will provide you with not actively at work forms. They should be coaching you through and talking you through these scenarios. Again, I always encourage you and recommend to over ask, if you will, in these scenarios, because these are the types of things where you do not want any employees to fall through the cracks. So if you currently have a 38 life group and you have a couple folks that are either, for example, out on disability, have currently applied for waiver of premium, or maybe on FMLA leave, I encourage you to ask your carrier partners how each individual person will be treated at the carrier transition level, because again, you ultimately want to make sure that you are doing A, the right things with the current carrier, and B, making sure that they continue to remain eligible when you move to the new carrier. That is all I'll say about that. A very important topic, though, in making group transitions. Retiree life benefits. Some employers may offer benefits to employees that retire. Retiree life face amounts are typically much less than benefits for active employees. For example, only $5,000. ADD benefits are usually not included. Some other provisions. Let's touch on the accelerated life benefit. Most group life policies contain an accelerated life benefit for someone with a terminally illness that allows them to obtain benefits prior to death. This provision can help families create funds to address any number of financial issues before the death of the insured occurs. Some key provisions with this benefit. Generally, there are two. Life expectancy. The ALB option can only be exercised if the policyholder has a limited life expectancy spelled out in the policy, typically 12 months, though some policies can be more restrictive. Benefit percentage. The policy will usually stipulate a maximum percentage, for example, 75% of the benefit that can be obtained prior to death. Again, I would encourage you here, because a lot of carriers do not specifically spell out this percentage or number in their proposals. I encourage you to ask them about this benefit. What percentage is it? To what max? The carriers will often include these provisions. However, some may have different percentages than others. You may have some that will only offer 70%. You may have some that can offer 80% to 250. You might have some that could offer 75% to 500,000. So again, it's just something I encourage you to ask your partners about. Let's touch on voluntary life. We'll touch on this a little bit now and then move into it a little bit later as well. But employers are increasingly offering voluntary life products to their employees. Costs are generally based on age and sometimes smoking status. Costs are payroll deducted, and employees can usually obtain specified amounts of coverage with no medical evidence. Voluntary life advantages. It's affordable, it's payroll deducted, guarantee issue amounts with no medical underwriting up to the guaranteed issue level. Spouse and child benefits are available. Coverage is typically portable, though rates usually change. One item I'd like to point out here is that most employer-paid life contracts are not portable, whereas voluntary life products are portable. Now, there are several scenarios where group carriers will offer portability on the basic life. If there's an explicit request to do so, oftentimes that can be approved by underwriting. If the in-force carrier offers portability on basic life, oftentimes the new quoting carrier will match that as well. Coverages usually includes the waiver of premium, and matching AD&D coverage is usually included as well. One item I like to really touch on here for voluntary life, especially when you're implementing a plan for the first time, is I always encourage you to advise the employees of your groups, if they're not sure, is to elect even just the minimum coverage amount, because what that does is it allows them and qualifies them on the voluntary life plan during that open enrollment with no medical evidence. And then it typically, if the carrier includes annual increases, will allow those employees to enroll by whatever the contract stipulates, whether that be, 2 increments, 1 increment, 10%, 20%. So again, the messaging should always be to your employees, if you're unsure, because financial, marital, everything, your status may change, is to recommend that they enroll in the plan now, because they will not need to furnish evidence of insurability. Whereas anytime they waive coverage initially, down the road, they're going to be required to furnish and provide satisfactory EOI. So what's typical in a voluntary life plan? Employees can usually elect coverage in increments of $10,000 to a stated maximum in the policy, for example, $500,000. Spouses can typically elect increments ranging from $500 to $5,000, depending upon the carrier, to a stated maximum in the policy, which is usually less than the employee maximum, for example, $250,000. Spouse coverage. So spouse coverage is usually limited to a percentage of the employee election. For example, could be 100%, could be 50%. The standard, actually, what I see in the marketplace is 50%, but oftentimes it is requested to offer 100%, and that can be doable with typically an underwriting approval. Spouse rates can be based on the spouse age or sometimes the employee age, depending on the carrier. And generally, carriers require that in order for a spouse to be able to elect coverage, the employee must also be able to elect coverage. Child coverage. Child coverage varies greatly by carrier, but generally amounts of $10,000 are often available. Coverage is also usually available to all children for the same cost. So a $10,000 child benefit would offer $10,000 to each child, and the cost would be the same regardless of the number of children covered. Coverage is usually less for younger children. For example, $1,000 for children under the age of 6 months. Again, everybody, this is another item that, in my opinion, does not get enough attention when you're marketing your RFPs and making your carrier transitions. This is a provision with the children where carriers' contracts will vary somewhat significantly. Oftentimes, you'll have carriers that will start a benefit at live birth. Some carriers will start the benefit at 2 weeks. Some carriers will have a smaller benefit from live birth to 2 weeks, whereas some carriers will have the same benefit for live birth up to age 26. Again, this is an item that I would encourage you to ask your reps and account managers about, because if you don't look at the contract here and unfortunately a claim arises, you can see pretty quickly that the benefit amounts vary greatly depending on what provisions you have in place. Let's touch a little bit about adverse selection. So the higher the assumed participation, generally, the lower the rate the carrier is willing to offer. The lower the participation, the higher the rate will go. What is the concept of adverse selection? People who select benefits are statistically the most likely to use the benefits and drive up utilization cost. Another item I do like to point out here, and this will also vary carrier to carrier, is that most carriers, for ease of administration, will match the voluntary life rates. Okay. I encourage you, if you know that the participation is going to be a very large percentage of the group, say 50, 60, 70%, I would give your reps and underwriters an idea of that ahead of time to see if they can work with underwriting to negotiate the rates. Because as I say here, the higher the participation, oftentimes that's generally going to lower the rates. So there's no harm in asking your reps if there's anything they can do about the voluntary life rates, depending on how the participation comes back. Let's go into taxation a little bit. This, I'll be honest, this piece can get a little in the weeds. We're gonna get pretty in the weeds here. So if anybody has any questions on this part afterwards, feel free to reach out. Before we do that, Lindsay, if you could open up the chat box again, we're going to do another polling question. And I would like to know what everyone's favorite food is. Again, that's what is your favorite food?
A lot of pizza responses.
Eating some pizza in Costa Rica doesn't sound half bad right now. I got to say that. We'll give a couple minutes to get those answers in and keep it moving. Ooh, king crab. That sounds really nice, actually. Some king crab in Costa Rica. It's living the dream right there.
Looks like we've got a majority in, but we'll give it another 30 seconds or so.
Think we're okay to go?
Yeah, I think we are good.
Perfect. So let's talk a little bit about some taxation implications. And Lindsay, I'll say this too. There's a couple of math equations on here that I'll spend a little bit of time going through with everybody, but it's going to be probably a little tricky to follow along. So if this is something that I can send you afterwards here, I'm happy to do that. It just has some general mathematic equations to help everybody calculate some of these formulas. So the big item here, everybody, is tax implications should and need to always be considered when designing group ancillary benefit programs. Many employers are aware of the implications and taxation on group life and disability products, but in many cases, they're unfamiliar with the fact that there are tax implications for basic term life, dependent life, as well as voluntary term life. So as a starting point, let's look at and begin by making it clear that the IRS has determined that group term life benefits are non-taxable to the beneficiary. Again, I'll repeat that, non-taxable to the beneficiary. However, employers must still be aware of tax regulations that apply to basic term life, dependent life, and voluntary term life policies. So what is the section that goes into this? It's called Section 79. The IRS has set regulations in Section 79 of the Internal Revenue Code that address the potential tax implications of group term life policies. We'll do a high-level overview of the impact on these policies. Just a quick note, Section 79 does not apply to whole life, travel accident, or any sort of E&D or accident policies. So, what is this and what is imputed income? Section 79 allows employers to offer $50,000 of basic or employer-paid term life coverage without any tax consequences. Any amounts in excess of $50,000 are subject to income tax. For amounts in excess of $50,000, employers must calculate the amount of imputed income, which is typically added to the employee's W-2 at the end of the year. Factors that impact imputed income. So some of the factors that drive the imputed income are the employee's age and the amount of group term life insurance in excess of $50,000. And employers use the table rates to calculate imputed income. I'm going to let everybody just take a look at this here. I'll read through it. Again, it's going to be a little challenging to do this on our call today, but it will at least hopefully provide you with some takeaways how to have a keen eye to this and calculate it for your employees. So as you'll see here, these are the table I rates for what is deemed to be considered the straddle test. So step one, you're going to want to determine the benefit amount in excess of $50,000. Step two, you're going to divide the amount by 1,000. That's the rate basis for basic life. You're going to need to then determine the employee's age, multiply the result by the rate based on the employee's age at the end of the year to come up with the monthly amount. And step five, you'll then have to report that imputed income, typically annually, to the IRS. So let's assume that ABC Company offers employees a $100,000 basic life benefit to a 40-year-old. So a 40-year-old has a 10-cent rate based off this table here. So for starters, you're going to do $100,000 minus the $50,000, which gives you $50,000. $50,000 divided by 1,000 gives you 50. Your rate table for a 40-year-old is the 10 cents, like we've said. 50 times 10 cents equals 5 a month, or 60 per year. $60 would need to be added to the employee's W-2 at the end of the year. So again, I know that was a lot to take in there. The underlying message here is if you are unsure or unfamiliar with this process, consult with your reps and your account managers. They should have some either marketing pieces or additional information on how the table rates work. Ultimately, The insurance company is limited to what they can do aside from getting the rates in compliance. It's ultimately up to the group to get themselves in compliance with the table rates. But what we can do and carriers can do is provide you as the broker and consultant with ammunition to allow you to have these consultative discussions with the imputed income. So more on Section 79. Many employers may not be aware that dependent life benefits are also potentially subject to Section 79. Amounts in excess of $2,000 are subject to imputed income. And again, the amount here is determined by using the table rates. So how can we avoid some of this, or at least at the very minimum, get your groups in compliance? Voluntary term life policies are also subject to Section 79. Nearly all voluntary life plans contain age-banded rates. As long as the rates for all ages are the same or lower than the table rates, or as long as the rates for all ages are the same or higher than the table rates, there are no consequences. So where you get in some issues and challenges, if you will, are when some voluntary life plans have rates that cross over or straddle the table rates. That is, some of the rates are above and some are below the table rates. In this instance, the rates that are below the table rates require imputed income to be reported for the entire amount of voluntary term life that has been elected. So how can we audit this, and how can you help and provide guidance to your employer groups? It's important to review voluntary life rates that are being offered by insurance carriers. When developing proposals, many insurance carriers will simply match the in-force rates without auditing for table compliance. If you find rates that straddle the table I rates, notify the group. The group may want to change the rates to comply with the table rates at the next policy anniversary and notify employees of the change rather than be burdened with the responsibility of imputed income tax administration. So again, I know I've said this a lot here, everybody, on this presentation, but this is another item that I would encourage you to have a proactive discussion with your company reps about. Oftentimes, carriers will have software that can sort of do a internal self-audit, if you will, that allows the reps to provide insights to our partners on if the group is currently straddling or not. But sometimes, things cannot get caught. So again, I would encourage you to have those discussions with your reps to make sure that the rates that are in place today or that you're quoting out are in compliance to the table rates, because all that's going to do is provide you with an area to get consultative with your decision makers to make sure that the group is in the appropriate compliance with these rates and that the imputed income is being calculated correctly. So let's move on to some more voluntary life insurance. We touched on this a little bit already, but I'm going to reiterate a couple of things here. So voluntary life, you also hear it called supplemental life, optional life. They're all interchangeable. The percentage of employers offering this coverage tends to increase, directly with company size. Benefit packages of large firms are typically more comprehensive than those of smaller employers. When there's an existing relationship between the carrier and the employer, a supplemental life offering is the logical next step for both parties. Larger employers are more likely to be approached about adding a voluntary life product. Again, if you have other voluntary life products in place, whether it be a larger group, a group that has a Ben admin system, if you're just simply looking to help round out the accounts, voluntary life is a great place to start. So again, touched on this a little bit already, but what are some of the benefit options and things to look for in a contract for voluntary life? Continuity of coverage, waiver of premium for retirement, accidental death and dismemberment, the accelerated life benefit, dependent life insurance coverage, guaranteed increases at annual enrollment. That ties back to my earlier point about encouraging folks to enroll during the open enrollment period for just the minimum coverage amount, because that qualifies them on the plan now without EOI, whereas any increase down the road is going to require that employee to furnish satisfactory EOI. Another item I like to touch on here, because this varies significantly from carrier to carrier, is I encourage you to ask about portability and conversion, right? Does the carrier send out information on that? Is it up to the employer to handle that with the employee? Carriers will have several ways to do that. Some carriers will mail information directly to the employees. Other carriers will provide you with a marketing tool and a marketing piece that provides the relative applications and contact information. Again, these are all very important things to touch on when you have folks that leave the company, whether it be for retirement, for conversion, things like that. Ask your reps about what the options are for port and convert. Let's talk a little bit now about enrollment, how to be successful, what you can do to lay the foundation, and then just touch on a little bit about what it takes to be successful, especially in today's environment where you've got a lot of people working from home with a hybrid approach. It's very important to make sure you see as many people as you can. Step one is case selection. So who are some of the employers to target? Those employers without employer-paid products is a very logical first place to start. Financially stable companies, employers with low turnover or longer waiting periods, willingness to support a needs-based presentation and enrollment process, employers with a controllable forum to see a majority of employees on company time. Step number two is you've got to make sure you have the employer support, right? So what does that really mean? You want to make sure that the management and the HR staff is supportive, that they have a way to send advanced communication to all employees, promote scheduled employee attendance at meetings on company time, establish and involve an HR liaison to coordinate payroll deductions, the ability to enroll new employees as they become eligible, and support future scheduled re-enrollments. One of the big things here, just to reiterate, is about sending advanced communication to all employees. Again, partner with your carrier reps and your account managers to get as comprehensive of materials as you can, whether that be personalized rate grids. You know, a lot of carriers these days with technology, it's a simple plug and play. If a carrier is provided with a census data that has all the required information that is needed, oftentimes those can be generated very, very quickly, that you can provide to the employees at the meetings the exact rates that they would be payroll deducting for voluntary life, voluntary disability, because oftentimes if you can't get the specific pricing in front of the employees, it makes the decision for them to enroll in the coverage much more difficult, let alone the education piece. The employees are going to want to know how much they're obviously going to be paying for these benefits. So bottom line, the more information you can give, certainly the better. So installation timing, we know how important that is too. Type of installation, are you doing this in person, on site? Oftentimes, you're probably going to have more success at a 18 employee company than a 500 life employee company as far as seeing everybody, right? You may be able to set up a benefits fair at a larger employer, but the key for these voluntary products is making sure you see as many people as you can. When is the plan installed, right? We're all very, very busy here in fourth quarter, especially starting in, let's call it, even these days, the end of August, early September, everybody's busy. Is that the best time to roll out a voluntary program? Sometimes yes, sometimes no, right? It's up to you all to have those strategic discussions with your employers on when it makes sense to do this. because if you do it, half, you're not going to be successful. It has to be a 100% full steam ahead effort and make sure that you have everybody's buy-in. How much time is allowed to support the enrollment process? If you're lucky enough to be able to get a meeting scheduled at the employer group, are they giving you 5 minutes? Are they giving you 30 minutes? All of these things are big factors in making sure you have as productive of enrollment as possible. So types of installations, consider multiple enrollments, benefits that fill different needs or complement one another. If you have a employer funded short-term disability plan, for example, maybe consider offering a voluntary LTD plan. Again, voluntary basis, the employees are going to be paying for that coverage, but in today's market and environment, it's more important than ever to have a well-rounded benefits package, and oftentimes that includes as many ancillary benefits as you can feasibly include in the portfolio, right? Employees may perceive a choice of benefit rather than a single product sell. Again, more the better. They want choices. They want options. Again, timing is critical with all of this too, as I've said a couple of times. If a voluntary product is being presented along with the cafeteria plan or during annual benefit review, participation can sometimes suffer because of cost shifting of medical premium, information saturation. Too many choices often equals confusion, which often equals no decision. So again, bottom line, it is very important to be strategic on the timing of this and making sure all parties are 100% committed and on board to this. And that starts with you all as the brokers and consultants. The carrier needs to be all on board on this, as well as the decision makers at the groups. Again, when estimating time requirements, just consider some of these 3 basic things: the employee's education, the enrollment material preparation, whether that be a paper enrollment, if you have a Ben admin system. These are all things to consider as far as how simple, or to be quite honest, how difficult the enrollment process might go. And again, employee meetings, can you get that time in front of the group? So let's talk about actual enrollment meetings. It's very simple. Pre-plan, enroll, wrap it up. From a pre-planning standpoint, these are just some ideas to get it off the ground. Management from your groups announce the communication that some new benefits will be rolled out. Planning with the management staff ahead of time is key. Employee communication materials, I've mentioned a couple of times, make sure you have the most comprehensive materials that you can feasibly offer. The presentation schedule, right? The use of other materials, whether it be posters. Oftentimes carriers will have short videos on the benefits of life insurance or the benefits of disability insurance that can quickly be embedded onto your Ben admin systems. Again, ask your reps and account managers what they can provide for you. So the actual enrollment, schedule employee meetings on company time. This is key. If you can get employees to show up, for an early morning meeting with the buy-in of management, that's even better, because then you can have it spill into a little bit of time and get some additional time with them in front of them to make sure they're as fully educated as possible. Again, utilize visual aids. Allow 24 to 72 hours for return of enrollment forms or waiver. That is a flexible number. However, I always encourage you to offer tighter deadlines for that. And the reason for that is not to rush anything. It is the longer you draw it out, the less likely the chance that you will actually receive those forms back. Because if it's not top of mind for these employees, oftentimes it just goes into a pile of all the other things they're dealing with. So wrapping up, post-enrollment reviews, reinforce the buying decisions. Before you leave that initial meeting, schedule the next meeting. Schedule that annual enrollment. I know it's likely going to be a year away, but get it on the calendar. And then submit your materials to the carrier. And finally, the re-enrollment effort. Why is this important? To provide ongoing service to your client, to promote conservation of business, to promote high employee participation, and to provide an adequate spread of risk. So what are some best practices to sort of wrap all of this up? Use goal-oriented planning. See every eligible employee. Have each employee complete an enrollment form or waiver form. Structure the meeting for minimal disruption to the workday, and pay attention to detail. Again, at the end of the day, everybody on this call has likely been doing this for quite a bit of time, and you all know your groups best, right? All I can reiterate is make sure you are spending the appropriate time doing the pre-work with your carrier reps. The more information and the more prepared you are when you get in front of your groups for these meetings, the more buy-in you'll get, the higher level of success you'll likely have as far as gathering and collecting participation. Bottom line, be prepared. Before we close out, I've got one final question for you all with a poll, and I would like to know what everyone's favorite sports team is. It can be college, it could be professional, it could be your high school sports team for all I care. I just want to know what your favorite sports team is.
Got a lot of Bengals coming in.
Hey, they'll be here before we know it.
Oh, we have a none.
Again, that's your favorite sports team. I was watching the All-Star game the other day, and it was a bummer that Hunter Green for the Reds had to be the one that gave the National League the loss with the home run he let up, but oh well. Lindsay, and then all I will say is that is the last polling question I have. We have gone through the PowerPoint now. If you would like to open it up to questions, if we want to field some questions, if you or Jeff have anything to wrap it up, we can take these last couple minutes to wrap up however you think is best.
All right, great. Luke, thanks so much for providing the CE for everyone today. Just a reminder also that you will receive a post-call survey pop-up that you need to answer to give us your licensing information so we can get you credit for that CE. Also, as an alternative, up to 1 hour after the webinar, you'll get an email also asking for the same info. Let's see. No, the questions are. Just got
Jeff and Lindsay, you know what else we could do if this would be best for you all? We can again do this however you all would think it'd be most efficient. But if you would like to maybe send me the list of questions, I'd be happy to respond to them in an email as well. If that would be easiest for you to cascade out to everybody, we can answer them on the call here. Again, whatever works.
Yep, absolutely. We'll do that. Just getting some comments and kudos for you on the presentation. So once again, thanks for that. And reminder that we always do keep these recordings and associated presentations on our website. So you can always come back and listen to it again if you want, or take a look at the presentation that Luke provided. You won't get another CE, but you can always come back and look at any of the webinars that we host are always available for you on our website. So I think with that, we can wrap it up. And again, look for follow-up to collect your licensing information. Thanks, everyone, for attending. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of the day. Take care.